Imagine there is someone who considers himself or herself a conservative in the state of New York, who, God forbid, finds themselves in a courtroom where you're wearing a robe. What comfort do you think that litigant would have that you described the hatred of conservatives, the righteous indignation, the anger at conservatives as a tremendous source of power for you personally? How does that possibly give anyone comfort that you would be a fair and impartial judge?
Way from calling the Republican Party an anti-democratic virus.
Yes, it's very different, and I don't believe I used those words, Senator.
Right. If you did use those words, will you pull down your nomination?
Senator, I don't believe I've used those words.
But if you did, will you withdraw?
Up, America. Welcome back to Incorrupt Truth, the home of raw facts, fearless voices, and unfiltered truth. Now listen, before we dive into this firestorm from Capitol Hill, I want you to grab your favorite snack, drink, or comfort food, settle in, and open your mind. Because what we're about to uncover today isn't just another hearing, it's a moment that shows the soul of our justice system shaking. This isn't about left or right, this is about right and wrong. When Senator John Kennedy and Senator Ted Cruz took that microphone, they weren't just questioning Dale Ho, they were questioning whether truth still has a seat in Washington. And on this channel, we don't polish the truth, we protect it. Because like I always say, a nation that hides from its reflection will one day forget its face. So let's dive in and see what really happened. Then I want your voice in the comments. Your thoughts, your truth. The kind of truth the White House needs to hear, because without you, America's government is just an empty echo chamber. Let's roll.
You've described yourself as a, quote, wild-eyed sort of leftist. Do I have that right?
Senator, I think I was referring to a caricature of the way that I think other people may have described me, not how I would describe myself. And I want to assure you that I understand that the role of a judge is to set aside whatever personal views that person may have.
I heard your testimony. Have you called republicanism, well, strike that. Did you say, quote, republicanism is an anti-democratic virus?
No, Senator, I don't believe I've used those words.
Okay, you're under oath now.
Yes, Senator, I don't believe I've used those words.
Okay.
I do remember saying last year that there was a loss of confidence in our elections that has spread kind of like a virus.
Right, well, that's a long way from calling the Republican Party an anti-democratic virus.
Yes, it's very different, and I don't believe I used those words, Senator.
Right. If you did use those words, will you pull down your nomination?
Senator, I don't believe I've used those words.
But if you did, will you withdraw?
It's hard for me to imagine a scenario in which I would
I'm just
use
saying
those
assume
words.
it. If you said it, will you withdraw?
If I were quoting someone else saying it to describe that kind of sentence, I wouldn't be expressing my own views. But Senator, I don't believe I've ever used those words. I've represented.
Did you when you sent out those personal tweets about Senator Cotton, Senator Blackburn, and Senator Cornyn? Did you mean them at the time?
Without hearing those tweets, Senator Kennedy, it's hard for me to remember precisely, what was said or what I was thinking at the time. I do very much regret the tone that I've taken on social media from time to time. I know that I've crossed the line from time to time, and
when you crossed the line, did you mean it?
Without knowing the specific context or the specific tweet that you're referring to, Senator Kennedy, it's kind of hard for me to say. But
do you generally tweet things you don't mean?
Senator Kennedy, I would agree with you that Twitter has become a very coarse place.
I don't want to debate Twitter. Do you generally tweet things that you don't mean?
Well, Senator Kennedy, I've contributed to the coarseness on Twitter sometimes by pushing the envelope to break through.
But when you did it, did you mean it?
It's hard for me to respond to that kind of generally, Senator Kennedy, without a specific
You're a smart
example.
guy. Sure you can. You either meant it or you didn't. You got two choices. Door A, door B.
Well, Senator Kennedy, I know that I pushed the envelope.
Okay.
And
Do you regret it?
I do regret it, Senator.
Do you regret it because you didn't mean it? Or do you regret it because it might cause you not to be confirmed?
Senator Kennedy, I regret it because I think it's contributed to the coarseness of our discourse overall, and I think it would be better.
When did you have this epiphany that everybody has equal dignity and worth? When you were nominated, or?
Well, I believe you're...
Including Republicans.
Well, I believe you're referring to my religious faith.
No, I'm not.
Senator.
I'm referring to your coarseness.
Well, the equal dignity and worth is a principle of my religious faith, Senator.
It's also a principle of morals and good judgment. I'm over. Mr. Ho, you're a smart man, I can tell. But I think you're an angry man. And I really have great concerns about voting for you. We don't need federal judges who are angry. We need federal judges who are fair and can see both points of view. And you said these things.
So in the last 12 months, you have engaged, or the last about 18 months, you have engaged in partisan attacks on multiple members of this committee. But you also wrote in November 2017, quote, "In these dark times, I've been fortunate to find tremendous sense of purpose in my work as a civil rights lawyer. But as a colleague of mine asked me over lunch recently, Dale, do you do this because you want to help people or because you hate conservatives?" What he was getting at is that anger can in fact be a tremendous source of power. For me, righteous indignation can provide a sense of moral clarity and motivate the long hours needed to get the work done. But it's only a short-term burst. It's not sustaining in the long run. Mr. Ho, if you wake up and are Judge Ho, and I recognize that New York is a blue state, but imagine there is someone who considers himself or herself a conservative in the state of New York, who, God forbid, finds themselves in a courtroom where you're wearing a robe. What comfort do you think that litigant would have that you described the hatred of conservatives, the righteous indignation, the anger at conservatives as a tremendous source of power for you personally? How does that possibly give anyone comfort that you would be a fair and impartial judge?
Thank you, Senator Cruz, for giving me an opportunity to address this. As I mentioned to some other members of the committee, this was a comment that I made in church where I was relaying a joke that someone else had told, the point of which was that that kind of temporary sugar rush from being angry at someone, while it can feel powerful in a moment, it's not the kind of thing that is sustaining for a human being in the long run. That at the end of the day, if you want to do good work in the world, it has to come from a different place, a place of love for your fellow person. And that's what I was trying to convey to my fellow congregants at my church.
Well, that's not what you said. And what you said is you described hatred and righteous indignation directed at conservatives. And I would note that that's a pattern that also continues. You know, a minute ago, you talked about how you're dedicated to equality. And I will say, looking at your record, that is not in fact the case. Your record instead is a partisan view. So, for example, you were a graduate of the Yale Law School. The Yale Law School has an open policy of discriminating against Asian Americans. One of the first things that Joe Biden's Justice Department did was dismiss the investigation against Yale because today's Democratic Party believes discriminating against Asian Americans in admissions is an acceptable form of bigotry. Do you agree with the Biden administration on that?
Senator Cruz, I haven't followed the ins and outs of what the Biden administration has done with respect to that particular matter. What I can tell you,
do you agree with your alma mater's policy of discriminating against Asian Americans in admissions?
Well, Senator Cruz, I'm a member of the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association. I try to do what I can in the Asian American legal community. I'm not aware of a particular policy of discrimination in admissions at Yale Law School. But I think to your larger question, Senator Cruz, I clerked for judges who were appointed by executives of different parties. They set an example for me that politics, you can have political views, but they don't have a role on the bench. And I would look to follow their examples.
Well, your record suggests precisely the contrary.
It all started with one question. Senator Kennedy looks Dale Ho in the eye and says, "Did you call republicanism an anti-democratic virus?" And you could feel the air tighten. Ho denies it. Once, twice, 3 times. But he never says, "I didn't." He says, "I don't believe I did." That's the kind of answer that makes Americans lean forward. Because when truth dances, trust disappears. See, Kennedy wasn't just grilling a nominee, he was defending the dignity of the courtroom. As we say here on Incorrupt Truth, a judge who bends the truth will soon break the law. Tell me in the comments, how would you feel standing in front of a judge who once said your beliefs were a virus? Then comes Senator Kennedy again, this time flipping through a pile of old tweets. Tweets where Ho attacked Republican senators by name. Senator Cotton, Senator Blackburn, Senator Cornyn. Kennedy asked the question every American was thinking. When you tweeted those things, did you mean them? And Ho dodges, talks about tone, talks about regret, but never answers the question. Folks, when a man aiming for the bench can't own his own words, that's not humility, that's evasion. Because like the old saying goes, A tongue that hides behind regret often fears the echo of truth. Smash that subscribe button if you're tired of politicians who never give straight answers. Here on Incorrupt Truth, we expose the spin and deliver the substance. Now this is where Senator Ted Cruz stepped up. He reads from a 2017 speech where Ho said that anger at conservatives can be a tremendous source of power. Think about that. A man who wants to wear the robe of justice admitting that anger gives him energy. That's not balance. That's bias. Ho tries to say it was a joke told in church. But Cruz cuts right through it because justice doesn't laugh when the joke is on half the nation. As we say here, a robe of justice cannot cover a heart of rage. So here's my question for you. Can a man who finds power in hating conservatives ever be a fair judge? Drop your answer below. Your comment isn't just a reply, it's your letter to Washington. Then Cruz does what few dare to do. He brings up Yale Law School, the same institution that's been accused of discriminating against Asian Americans. Ho, a Yale graduate, says he hasn't followed the story. And that's when Cruz, and honestly the whole room, went silent for a second. Because how can a civil rights lawyer not follow one of the biggest civil rights controversies of his own alma mater? Here's the truth. Silence isn't always ignorance. Sometimes it's convenience. Or as I like to say, when the facts sting, the coward wears earplugs. What Kennedy and Cruz exposed wasn't just about Dale Ho, it was about the integrity of our courts. They showed us that blind justice is starting to squint. We don't need judges powered by anger. We need judges powered by truth. We need people on the bench who don't see Republican or Democrat, they see American. That's what Incorrupt Truth stands for. We are the voice of those who still believe truth is bipartisan. Because when justice becomes political, freedom becomes optional. Now here's where you come in. I want to hear your raw thoughts, not filtered, not polite the truth as you'd say it if you were standing in the White House. Do you trust this kind of nominee? Do you think the Senate hearings expose the truth or just scratch the surface? Comment below and let your voice echo beyond YouTube. Because here at Incorrupt Truth, your comment is not just a reply, it's a message to Washington that the people are watching and the people remember. If we don't speak, they'll assume we're silent. And silence is how corruption survives. So, what did we learn today? We learned that Kennedy's sharp wit and Cruz's relentless questioning tore the mask off political doublespeak. We learned that Dale Ho's answers raised more questions than they solved. And we learned that America still has senators who aren't afraid to swing the sword of truth. I'll leave you with this. A country that stops questioning its judges will one day be judged by its silence. This is Incorrupt Truth, where your voice matters, your opinions matter, and your freedom to speak the truth matters. Hit like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone who still believes that America's greatness lies in its people, not its politicians. Now, tell me below, what would you say to Washington if they were listening right now? Because trust me, if enough of us speak, they will. Until next time, stay brave, stay curious, and keep your mind incorrupt.